All right. Well, I'm so excited, first of all, and now I will actually take it away, but just wanted to start with some good vibes.
Yes!
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Generation, the podcast, the audio companion to the HBO Max original series, Generation. I'm Whembley, Sewell, editor-in-chief of Them.
And I am Gigi Goode, semi-professional girl next door. Today, we are talking to Daniel and Zelda Barnz, co-creators of Generation, Lukita Maxwell, who stars as Delilah, and Christina Nieves, who co-wrote the episode with Zelda and Daniel. But let's start talking about this episode, because it's the mid-season finale, which, don't get your panties in a twist, that means there are 8 more episodes to come. Whembley, can you please remind us what happened?
Yeah, I will get into it. So in episode 8, we see really everyone working together to help Delilah and Jay with their newborn. I mean, it's something that we've been kind of leading up to. So I think that there's just a general sense of like what's going to happen. I think everybody's really on the edge of their seat. I know I was. And one of the really beautiful things though about this episode is that while everyone is still facing their own challenges, each within the throes of their own personal struggles, they're still fiercely dedicated to their chosen family and its newest member, this newborn. So we also see the entire school show their support, quite literally, like bearing everything for Chester, even when they don't really know what's getting to him. We see Nathan and Naomi making amends, and there's some new faces, some aching hearts, but ultimately this family really knows how to rise to the occasion.
Yeah, it was a really interesting and fresh new kind of change of pace to this season that we've had so far. It's kind of brought a new layer to the emotions and kind of it almost felt so quiet, the whole time. And it was just, I mean, aside from Chester in the in the schoolyard, I'm mostly referring to the baby situation, but it was I don't know, it was so cool and fresh to see. So I'm really eager to get into it.
Me too. And because this is the mid-season finale, we have so many special guests here today.
Lots.
I think it's one big, beautiful roundtable.
Is this the record, or do we hold the record today for the most amount of guests at once?
I think so.
This is it, ladies and gents.
We've got series creator Zelda Barnz here again. Hello, Zelda.
Hi.
And Zelda's dad, Daniel Barnz, who directed the series. Welcome back to the show, Daniel.
Thank you.
Yes, plus we have the honor of having Christina Nieves, who co-wrote the episode with Zelda and Daniel. Hey, Christina.
Hey.
And lastly, the most adorable person I've ever seen in my life, Lukita Maxwell, who stars as Delilah. We have been dying to talk to you, Lukita. You come up in just about every episode of this podcast, so it's about time you're here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Shall we get into it?
Let's.
All right. So at this point of the season, Delilah has proven to be a character with, I think, really strong conviction, and I think really exemplifies this in episode 8 with her maturity, handling what has been a very surprise pregnancy. In fact, our very first impression of the entire show begins with the initial tension that is, between youth and growth. And that comes by way of Delilah. Like, she is our first impression, our introduction to the show. And I would love to know, Lukita, what was your first impression of Delilah and what stood out to you about her?
Ooh. Off the page, she was just so incredibly strong and so incredibly sure of who she was and how she fit into her world and her society, which I don't think a lot of teenagers can say of themselves. I couldn't say that of myself when I was a teenager. But yeah, just her confidence and her unapologetic tendencies, even if they're annoying sometimes in class.
For sure, yeah. But I want to know from Daniel and Zelda, where on earth did you find Lukita?
Yeah, so our casting director, we were working with a casting director on the pilot
Carmen Cuba, and she's amazing. And she brought Lukita to us, and we saw her first auditions, her first self-tapes, and we were like, oh my God, we love her. And she was actually 17 at the time, and we weren't supposed to cast minors, and so we were worried that that might be an issue potentially legally. And so we kept bringing her back, and we were fighting really hard, and I'm so glad that she's a part of the show, because she's so perfect for Delilah.
She was also, by the way, had just started college for architecture, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so then we also kind of felt a little guilty, like, oh God, we don't want to pull her away from school. But then we couldn't resist more things. She was so good. But the thing was, the scenes that she read, were the scenes in the pilot, and she was so funny and really nailed that kind of like social justice warrior kind of passion in a way, but then revealed like all these other layers of humanity and poignancy and like these skills with drama that were so critical for this character, and is able to do it in a way that never gets sentimental, which is also really key. Because, well, we could spend a whole podcast talking about how we want to tell adoption stories and what's important to us, and like how we don't want to lean into like tropes of like shame and regret and all this stuff. But it was like the person who pulled this off is Lukita. And I just want to call out a moment in this episode when she goes into her room. She's like, oh, I have to stop off and pick up some books and stuff like that.
One of my favorites.
And that thing, when we wrote it, Christina and Zelda, you remember, it was always like, can this moment be pulled off?
Yes.
Because there's no dialogue, and this girl has to walk into a room, and we just see her take some books in a shirt and understand that she's like suddenly realizing that she, in the course of a day, has grown up, like has changed entirely. Who she was in the morning is not the same
I'm
person
getting
as she is
chills.
now. Well, that's what it was like to watch Lukita do this scene. And it was like, but she just, now I want to curse, just fucking stands there and looks at that photograph and then looks out again, and you understand it all. There are not many actors who can pull that off. And Lukita, like, God, I still look at that and I'm just amazed.
It's Christina. I have to co-sign that and say too, I was ready to write you a fan letter. I was like, it's gonna be weird. She'll know me. But oh my God, that feeling of like the thing you dreamed this moment would be, that felt so impossible, like Daniel's saying, because it's just loaded with so much, and it completely internal for the most part, although we visualized it as much as we could. Like it was so clear and so complex and so
gorgeous.
Full. Yeah, that your work of the whole season, but especially in our episode, is just beyond.
Oh my God. Thank you. I'm crying.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely adds to the air of what is so prevalent right now in today's like young society, which is like cancel culture and like what to say and what not to say, what's PC, what's wrong, and what companies you can support and what you can't. And it's almost a bit of a caricature of it in a sense, but it again brings more attention to the fact that is so prevalent, and I almost like that it's in a sense making fun of it. But in this episode, we've talked about this quite a few times. It's one of my favorite subjects. It hits home for me, and that is the concept of a chosen family. In this episode, the concept of all the characters in this chosen family is very clear, and they get to explore and navigate and support each other. Quite frankly, they've come together in ways that really don't require much words or actions, and you can see that close to the end of this episode especially. But I want to play this clip that really captures that notion.
I couldn't have done just thank you.
No. You don't thank your sisters. I'm adopted.
No, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it's this whole thing with my birth parents. Or like if they had not got stuck at a red light, they would have made it to the CVS before it closed. And then they would have got a condom, and I wouldn't have been born.
that one scene is, and that's kind of what I was talking about when I was like, it's so nice to have something so quiet and just like, you have nothing to listen to but these people's voices with, nothing layered over it or anything of that sort. And this hit home for me too, because I'm the same way with my chosen family and my best friends who live right across the street. It's like, if we're doing something for one another, there's never any sort of transactional aspect to it. There's no sense of needing to say thank you, or it's just implied. That's what family is for. So Daniel and Zelda, I want to know, how did you originally see the friend group approaching this challenge?
What's kind of fun in the pilot is that Delilah, as a character, you see her in the classroom kind of going off on the math problem, and then Riley sort of whispers to Nathan, "Oh God, she's so annoying." And then like you just see her at the party saying repeatedly, "I wasn't invited." And like that is the introduction to Delilah. And I think we just really love that this character who is in the background would become this person who would become sort of a central focus for not just the series, but also for all of the characters. In fact, in that photo that's taken on the couch of Nathan, Greta, and Chester, there's a fourth character that's out of focus in the background, and that's actually Delilah. Which is just a little Easter egg that we put in for people who are paying close attention, because we knew that she was going to become sort of a focal point for the whole series.
For sure, yeah. But Lukita, I'm curious, once again, because this is a topic that just means so much to me. I want to know if, aside from this cast, who you've clearly become very close with, and aside from your immediate family, do you have a chosen family? Like, have you found yourself a chosen family that has kind of stuck with you?
Oh, this is going to make me sound so lonely. I think that I'm in the process of finding my chosen family at the moment. When I started Generation, I was kind of in that in between of high school and college, of letting go of like high school friends and building those friendships with new college friends that I didn't necessarily find. And then, Generation has become my chosen family at this time. And I think that this at this time, especially in my life, this show came at the perfect time for me personally, because I feel like in these last years of my high school and then into these post-high school years shooting the show, I've found and discovered and been able to have conversations about my queerness and about my identity, period. And I've found that safe space in this cast and this Generation family. So no, that doesn't make me sound lonely at all. I have this wonderful, beautiful family.
Yeah, I was going to say.
There was something really magical from Zelda and my perspective about watching this whole cast come together, because of course when you cast each person separately, you have no idea what kind of person they are, and to see them come together in this way echoes kind of the theme of the show, as you're talking about chosen family. And that monologue that you played, that Nathaniel Alexander delivers so exquisitely, is kind of all about the randomness of how miracles occur. And a lot of, by the way, what she's talking about in the monologue is based on a true story. I mean, it's based on things that Zelda's birth mother said to us about how Zelda ended up in our family. And it including, by the way, when we asked Zelda's birth mother why she chose a same-sex couple, because that was like 19 years ago, and it wasn't like now, when every same-sex couple is it's like a dime a dozen. And she said, well, my best friend in high school was gay, and I love the show Will and Grace. And that's something that the character of Ariana says in that monologue. But that whole thing is about kind of all these like miraculous coincidences that have to go into place to create a chosen family. And it was true of this cast. It was true of Zelda coming into our lives. And it's true of the whole, all the characters in the show as well. It's just kind of amazing when you backtrack and think about all those little things that have to go into place that these people coming together. It's really quite beautiful.
We're talking about episode 8 of the HBO Max series Generation, and we're going to get into a lot more after a quick break.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We're talking to Generation creator Zelda Barnz, director of Generation Daniel Barnz, series writer Christina Nieves, and Lukita Maxwell, who stars as Delilah. Dan, Zelda, Christina, I would love to know how you approached this episode and how those little miracles kind of came to life on the page and then ultimately on screen, especially tied to, Delilah's experience with adoption.
It's Christina. I'll start by just saying, co-writing this episode with Daniel and Zelda felt like its own miracle for me personally, and was such a lovely, soul enriching process. And it was really easy in a lot of ways, not to make it sound like it wasn't hard work. We worked hard, of course, but it really flowed. And at that point, we had such a respect and love and jam going as a group that I feel like a lot of it really was quite natural. And we talked for a long time about, specifically this storyline of Delilah and where it was going to end. And of course, wanting to honor that it was both an empowering moment and also a difficult moment and filled with so many emotions, and kind of how to honor, and not make it seem like a binary experience or it was one thing or another, or, but rather that it was just sort of an explosion of all of these really beautiful, complicated, complex moments for her and all the characters that were there. It was just such an out-of-body experience, it being my first episode that I've ever written as a TV writer, and spending so long discussing this and working on it, and then seeing it come to fruition in such a gorgeous way is just such a huge... I felt like I had nothing to do with it at all. And watching it was this whole other thing that had nothing to do with me because of the talent of everybody involved.
Sorry, I'm interrupting, and I have to hastily correct the record because having nothing to do with you is just the wrongest statement I have ever heard.
Thank you.
And I do think it's kind of a cool story because Christina was our writer's assistant when we began our writer's room. And, for listeners who don't know the writers, they're there. They write down everything that's said in the room. We tried to have a very egalitarian room where it was just any idea people should say. And Christina would chime in with these ideas. But when Christina spoke in our room, it was just like pearls of wisdom dropping out of his mouth. That also just couched in joy and humor. And so really early on, Zelda and I we knew we were going to write this episode, and we were I think we should pull Christine into this. And so Christina took the first stab at the outline. So we'd kind of broken the story in the room, and then she took the first stab at the outline, which is this 15-page document. Every outline, everybody knows, is the most dull and boring thing ever. Christina's outline for this episode had us in tears. When she got to that part where she was talking about the kids giving the gifts, because we had this idea in the room, but when she's specified what the gifts were, and then found okay, so they're gonna give this gift, but then Nathan's gonna pull out the chapstick. And,
I love the chapstick. Was so good.
It was just oh God. And so then we were well, okay, so she crushed the outline. Now she has to come write the episode with us. And so it was just a joyous thing. But that in itself was a dream come true event, just for all of us to be able to kind of collaborate on this together.
Well, I could add on to, the symphony of praise and all of that, because I am just genuinely struck by how good of a character Delilah is. And I don't mean this in a very, everybody's oh, she's perfectly nice. No, I mean, she seems just such a good, grounded, intelligent person who wants to be as informed and as engaged in the world as possible. And I would love to know from you, Lukita, as you were diving into this character, I want to know where you think that her just all around kind of good nature comes from, and what you wanted to bring to the writer's vision of this character.
Yeah, I was talking to Justice about this the other day. There's the scene at the end of 8 with Bo and Chester talking about the Dungeons and Dragons alignments, and we were discussing that Delilah is lawful good. I think that she is just inherently a good person and knows what she wants and knows what she needs from her world and the society around her, and isn't afraid to voice that opinion. But when she builds these friendships with Ariana and Naomi in 6 and 7, she's able to kind of let her guard down a little bit more and open up to these other characters and have friends for seemingly the first time in a while. And in 8, she trusts every single one of these characters so much. There is no word spoken throughout, Jay coming to the bathroom or Greta coming to pick them up or showing up at Chester's house. They're all finding out about this incident in the moment, but no words are spoken. They know immediately that they need to help her and they want to be there for her.
Well, I have to pick up on something that you said, and this is going to be a question for the entire class. You said that you were lawful good, and when Chester is talking about his crush, he identifies chaotic good rather than anything else. Like that meme, if you will, is the label. And so much of the show, I think, is rooted in using almost like digital lexicon as a way to understand oneself. And I just want to know how that factors into a shaping of a character or narrative, and just what being able to play with social media has meant to how you can build, an entire story about young people today.
Oh God, I was so worried you were going to ask us what our Dungeons and Dragons alignments were.
That comes next.
And I was like,
that comes next.
I was like, no, I could not answer that
me
question.
too. I was like trying to imagine the squares. I was like, what's the middle? Yeah.
I'm just chaotic, so.
Yeah.
One of the challenges of this last episode was to give some resolution to Delilah's storyline, but also be continuing all of our other characters' storylines at the same time. And, again, just a great credit to our actors, because Chase and Haley, who play Riley and Greta, they don't exchange any words in this episode at all, but the tension between them is so palpable. And coming back to your original question about social media, there's that moment where Chase types, "I miss us." And it's like, I don't think I believed that a moment like that could feel emotional, even as we were writing it, but because of the way that they do it. And, and when I say do it, I mean, I'm even talking about the way her fingers are moving on that phone. Like, there is a tentativeness to that is like so emotional. And it was a bit of a revelation to see how you could use social media to convey not just story points, but genuine emotion.
Watching shows that were created by adults that use social media, often it feels kind of judgmental of teenagers and their use of social media, which I really don't like, because I don't want to feel judged for something that's just kind of part of my language and part of my world and something that I use every day, and so does everyone my age. I don't know. It feels very pointlessly judgmental when adults try to present teenagers as like always on their phones, always using social media. And my high school actually did an all-school screening of a Scare Tactics movie that was literally just like, it was like all these kids going to rehab because they played video games every day, like actual like rehab where they had to like meditate and like not be on screens for weeks at a time. And I was just a little bit like, I understand that screens obviously are not like the most healthy way to spend your time, but also it is just kind of a part of our world now, and that's something that at the end of the day we are going to have to accept. And so definitely representing social media as something just in an honest, just presenting it without any kind of judgment or opinion was really important to us. Yeah.
By the way, everybody should pay attention to the earrings in this show, because I'm just thinking about it because Delilah wears those BLM earrings that you made, right? It's really interesting. Like, I've never seen like accessories tell such a story for every character. And like Chester, Ariana, like the other days, like, well, I can't give away stuff that happens in Block 2, but like she's wearing these earrings and it's like all that stuff. It's really, yeah, amazing.
Honey, that's drag.
Yes.
Well, I'm so excited to get a sneak peek at those earrings, like you said. But yeah, it's amazing to see. And I mean, talking about accessories, I feel like we'd be remiss to not go here and unpack what was, I think, the scene with the most weight to it.
Yeah.
And that is the scene where everyone is giving the baby an item. And there was everything from CBD to Delilah's feminist swag, and even things that seemed meaningless, you could tell were so important in some way to each of the characters. And for all of you, I just want to know how you approached this scene and after, it was on the page, what it felt like to bring it to life.
Well, I'll just jump in by saying, I mean, this was a really, really important moment to us, obviously, not just for the series, but I think for Zelda and me personally, because it was a story about, placing a child for adoption, and Zelda's adopted. And, it felt to us like so often there are narratives related to adoption that are shrouded in secrecy or shame or regret. And what we really wanted to do was to convey a different version of that story, which is about making a strong, responsible decision, and something that really only Delilah's character felt capable of. I mean, Delilah, because she has so much strength, really understood the sort of the power of that. And that was how we wanted to convey the moment. We wanted to make sure that it didn't feel like something, I mean, it is poignant, but not sad per se. And so that was part of the idea of giving the gifts, and also that each of these characters in some way is projecting something on this child and carrying their own kind of narrative through it, and wanting to give it a gift. And we always talked a lot about, our writers room, like, Gen Z, like, save our world, please,
Yeah.
and I think that was what we wanted to convey in this moment too, is that, like, this baby now can, like, go on and save the world even more. And that he was like Gen Z kind of passing on these gifts to say, like, yes, go be the superpower that we need. And then all of the, the characters, and you can see it in their faces, as they hand over that gift, they're just like bringing all of those stories to that child.
Wait, what is everyone's favorite addition there?
I really do love the chapstick and $20 bill moment of Nathan's, just because it's not about giving this child something big and important and meaningful. It's just about giving what you have in that moment. And I think that's all he has, but it's enough, and that's okay. And nobody's judging him for not having, like, something meaningful on him. It's just kind of like they're all just showing up and doing what they can do and figuring it out together. And that's kind of, I don't know, I love that what he pulls out is not useful or helpful at all to the situation, but it's just kind of like, it's still really sweet, and it's him trying.
It's so funny how, like, the choices that sometimes you doubt are the ones that resonate the most. Is I do remember, Nathan with the chapstick and the $20 bill specifically was in the outline. And then I think, like, very early on, like, my first draft or something, I like doubted that choice and, like, put something else that he gave. And I remember immediately Daniel was like, where is the chapstick? What happened? Put it back. And I was like, I don't know. I doubted myself. And that's, like, one of the gifts that people most, like, comment on or like are charmed by. Or
it's so perfect for his character too.
Right.
It's like, because Nathan wouldn't have anything, like, on him to like anything special to give. It's just, like, what he has in his pockets. Yeah.
Just a dweeb.
I love the way Gigi, you described it as quiet, because that was the thing that arrested me too, that I thought was just, again, so brave in its simplicity and in its beauty, in the choices that were made, like, that go, in my mind beyond the script, because obviously, I was part of the writing, but in the performances and in the directing, taking it that next level to allow it to stand as is. And it's this quiet moment that's sort of stripped down. Like, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it again,
impactful.
because just letting it stand and be as this. And it's really earned, I think, as I watched, like, the whole season. There's so many bananas moments and so much comedy and so much zaniness. Yeah. And then to have the, like, sort of maturity to just, and this is when we get to be still and ground and come together is what moved me the most.
We've spent so much time talking about like leaving, waiting, departures, emotional, like the emotional severance of relationships and things like that. But I would love to end with you, Lukita. Where do you think we've left Delilah, and where do you think she is at this point? What's next for her?
I think that Delilah has always been very sure of what her future looks like to her. And she had mapped out exactly, you know, when she was going to go to college and when she was going to grow up. And this moment coming out of the blue and kind of taking her by surprise and her having to grow up in this moment, I think matured her even more. She's a little bit scared by that and a little bit scared of letting go of adolescence. And I think that moving forward, she's going to want to try and find what a normal adolescence means beyond this event.
I know I, for one, cannot wait to watch that evolution happen. And I want to thank you all so much for being here for this mid-season finale conversation. And yeah, we'll be here waiting for it to come back.
Me too.
Thank you all so much for coming. This is going to be our last episode for a little while, but don't worry, we will be back this summer when the second half of the series returns. So stay tuned, y'all.
Generation the Podcast is a production of HBO Max and iHeartRadio, hosted by us, Gigi Goode and Whembley Sewell. The podcast is produced and written by Phoebe Hunter, written and researched by Sierra Kaiser, and engineered, edited, and mixed by Matt Stillo. It's executive produced by Ethan Fixell.
If you haven't already subscribed, rated, or reviewed Generation the Podcast, please do so on the iHeartRadio app, HBO Max, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to watch the series itself on HBO Max. Thanks for listening.